Executive Director Show. I'm Brandy, this is Jeff, and our purpose on this page is to share the vision, skills, techniques, inspiration, motivation, and daily activities needed to build a solid professional income. Or business, sorry. My eyes are a little bad and I'm reading off of my notes, so you'll just have to bear with me a little bit. Always remember, this is a team philosophy. It's your business. You need to do what's best for you and your family. And now let's get out a pen and paper and let's take some good notes.
All right, guys, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send out a couple quick invites here to Tom and Dakota and David. A couple people who are on the team working with us, putting this together. Francisco, which I'll see here in a bit. Josh. Brendan. Donald. Jennifer. Taylor. Okay, just getting out some invites here real quick. Tom is with us, along with Zach. What's happening? So here we go, guys. We're going to go into recruiting philosophy. There's two mindsets inside of direct sales. One is sell the product. The other is recruit and build a team. Now, typically what happens is most people get into a mindset, especially early on. Dave, what's up? Of just selling the product, and they think it's easier. And the reality is, in most cases, it's not. In most cases, selling the product itself, you're going to get into a ton of objections. Things that you're going to run into, the kind of objections are, your product is price, your product is made, the ingredients, depending on which product it is. But especially inside of Legal Shield specifically, what I found is people start trying to sell the product itself rather than recruit and build a team. What they're going to run into right off the bat is you're trying to sell responsibility. And selling responsibility is a very hard thing. You're going to get the objections that I usually hear is, well, I don't get in trouble. I don't need an attorney. I've never needed an attorney. I've never used an attorney. Why would I want to use an attorney? Or you get I've got a friend who's an attorney. I've got a relative who's an attorney. And most of the time, that's the objections I run into. But what I found is regardless if it's this company or any company, selling the opportunity actually becomes easier because more people are looking for an opportunity. More people are looking for money. More people are looking to get ahead. So to start out with, if you have that mindset of you're going in to build a company, you're going in to build and recruit and teach people how to make money, it's a much more attractive, it's a much wider net. Now, there's a couple things you need to know about building an organization and recruiting. The first thing is there's really three mindsets to it. The first one is the poser's mindset. Poser's mindset says, okay, this is basically so simple, so easy. I'm just going to tell 3 people, 4 people, and they're going to go out and do all the work. I don't know if you've ever had this mindset. I had this mindset. I drew it out and I said, okay, these are the guys who are going to do it. I know who's going to do it. And then I went out and showed it to him, and that was not who did it. In fact, none of the original 6 on my list ended up having anything to do with the business at all, nor did they want anything to do with the business or the product or anything I was doing. The second group of people is the amateurs. And the amateurs basically think there's just one trick to making all this work. And they'll go to the meeting and be like, what's the one trick? There has to be a trick here. Something somebody said, something somebody did. Or did you wear a specific shirt? Did you wear a specific cologne? There has to be, something you did that I'm not doing, that's the reason why. And the reality is none of that. What it really comes down to is the third mindset, which is the professional mindset, which is realistic expectations. There are probably some things I need to learn, and here's just a quick list. You're going to need to learn how to contact. You're going to need to learn how to invite. You're going to need to learn how to present. You're going to need to learn how to follow through and get somebody else or something else to basically give the information to the person to answer the questions that they have or the concerns they have, to bring them from questionable to I'm ready to make a decision. Now understand, the decision we're initially looking for is for them to get in, not for them to believe, not for them to want to build, not for them to want to marry the company. Too many people are trying to get people to marry things before they go out on a date. And I hope you understand that analogy. The last thing is bringing people out to events. If you can bring somebody through that cycle, contact, invite, present, follow through into an event, what I believe is the person will close themselves rather than you trying to be a salesperson and close them. We want the system to do the work, not necessarily the person. So realistic expectations, what are those realistic expectations? Well, learning that system, knowing that system, knowing that it's going to take a little bit more time than just the lottery mentality of scratching off, 6 names and all of a sudden it's going to work for you. The next is the mindset of how you think. You have to think like a business owner, and the easiest way to say that to the average person who doesn't understand is you're 100% responsibility for everything that goes on. 100% responsible, and that's not an attractive thing to sell up front to most people, but I'm talking about the mentality you need to build, not the mentality you need to sponsor or get in. Alex Hernandez is with us. What's happening, sir? 2, think like a networker. Now, thinking like a networker, you have to think duplication. Thinking like a networker, you have to think, am I doing something my entire team can do? Am I doing something that I can then pass on to somebody else who can pass on to somebody else who can pass on to somebody else? And if it's not something that you can keep passing on, then you're not going to end up building a team out of it. It doesn't mean you won't make money. It doesn't mean you won't have a little bit of personal success. But if the goal is to build something to walk away, you need to learn how to build it in a way that you think like a networker when you go out and do this. So you're like, okay, I'm not going to do too much. I'm not going to do too many. I'm going to do enough to set a pace to teach everybody else what to do. 3rd is think like a leader. Thinking like a leader, again, comes back to responsibility, but it says, I'm going to go do it first. I'm not going to delegate. I'm not going to dictate. I'm going to physically go do this, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to show you how to do it, and therefore I will gain the respect needed and the knowledge needed to teach you the right things to do. So a mindset is a particular way of thinking or a set of opinions about something. And that's really what we're talking about, is just the mindset of recruiting. So the problem is why this is difficult, because a lot of people say, well, why is recruiting so difficult? For some people it's really easy, right? You talk to some people and it's like, oh my gosh, it doesn't even seem like they're working that hard and they're just succeeding. Well, it has a lot to do with your programming. Based on where you grew up, who you grew up around, most people's programming is that of what? A job mentality. I got told that. What did you get told? Go to school?
Yeah, go to school, get good grades.
If you get good grades, then you get into a good college. If you get into a good college, then you can choose a great career. If you get into a career, then you can save money and buy a house and everything will work out. And what I'd ask everybody is that working for the people you know? Do you know anybody that's working really well for? I mean, it really hasn't worked in years, but people are still selling that bullshit to people every day. Corey Mohammed, what's happening, sir? So I find that programming that we get growing up holds us back a lot when we're building a business and recruiting, because those certain things that our parents told us, that our teachers told us, that different people told us year after year after year kind of still sit in the back of our head. I don't know if it sits in the back of your head. I still hear it at the level I'm at. I'm sure you still hear it too. The next is your overall philosophy, and philosophy is kind of interesting. I find that people have one of two philosophies. They have the philosophy of abundance, meaning I can create, or they have the philosophy of fixated, meaning there's a there's only so much pie. This is the way it was explained to me, is there's only so much pie, and if you take a slice of pie away, that leaves less for everybody else. And that is a scarcity mindset. So you really want to have a philosophy mindset of abundance, that we can just turn around and make another one. And there really is unlimited resources. And a friend of mine told me this, and it really made sense. He goes, some people will argue that there's finite resources, and that's true if it wasn't for ingenuity and technology. Because every time we think we've ran out of most things, what ends up happening is technology and ingenuity of a person, an idea, ends up finding a way to create more of whatever we need. So if you have that mindset, if you have that philosophy to begin with, if you have the abundance mindset, what I found is you're able to attract more people. Now, how do you change your programming? How do you change your philosophy? Well, it has a lot to do with three things. What you listen to, or who you listen to, what you read, and the people you're around. I learned this early on, that wealthy people teach their kids different things than the average middle class or poor. Let's face it, if we were sitting around having a conversation with Oprah and Will Smith and, Bill Gates, and not to say that I love all these people, because some of them I like more than others, not because of their profession or anything like that, just personal. What I found is they're teaching their kids different things. Now, Oprah doesn't have kids, but I'm sure if she did, she would probably teach them different things. She's been dating a guy for a long time. If she did, she's probably teaching the people around her different things. And I only know that because if you sit there and listen to her, I listened to her interview Will Smith, they were sitting talking about the mindset they have of kind of staying humble up here, but keep making the money. That what drives you, what makes you work so hard? Well, it's the fear of ever having to go back to where they were. And Will Smith kind of jokingly, he's like, you stay up late? And she's like, yeah, I still have it. He's like, I thought you were doing okay. He's like, how much do you need? You could burn $1 million on your porch every day, and still have money left over. And she's like, it's just the mentality that you have. But wealthy people teach their kids different things. Wealthy people look at things differently as well. So then it comes down to your identity. I found that when people look at building something, especially inside of direct sales, because I've actually been involved in several companies, and that's good and bad. And what I say is good and bad is the one thing that I have now is perspective that I didn't have before. Because if you've only been in one company, your perspective is kind of like this, which isn't a bad thing. But now when I start talking about the other things that happen in these other companies, I know from experience rather than from theory or for somebody telling me from the outside. I find that my conviction to tell the truth is a lot greater now than it ever has been, because I've actually seen how it works on the other side. And sometimes that's great knowledge, but it's also great experience to be able to pass to somebody else and say, so the identity of what I'm talking about is how do you identify yourself? Some people, watch this, some people identify themselves as a salesperson, and that's all they are. So what do they try to do? They try to sell the product. That's all they try to sell. Some people identify themselves as, hi, Allie, how are you? See a couple different people jumped on here. Allie's here, and David Peters is here, and Johnette's here. Welcome. So some people have the mentality or the identity of a salesperson. And if all you have is the identity of a salesperson, you got into a company, you got into Legal Shield, let's say, and you're just going to sell product and that's all you're going to do, then the identity of a salesperson is that's how you're going to come across. Or think about this. Well, I got into this little thing. My identity is I just signed up. That's all I did. Well, if your identity is you just signed up, you're probably going to act like somebody who just signed up. Whereas if you say, hey, I'm a professional recruiter, think about if that's how you identified yourself. I'm a professional recruiter. So what are you going to do? You're going to recruit. I'm a professional recruiter and team builder. What are you going to look at? Everything's perspective changes. Now watch this. I'm a big business owner. What is a big business owner? A big business owner, based on what Robert Kiyosaki talks about, is anybody who employs more than 500 people. Now, obviously, inside of Legal Shield or inside of direct sales, we're not employing the people that work with us or work around us or work on our team. Everybody's independent. Everybody can do their own thing. Everybody has their own philosophy about doing this. Everybody's allowed to go their own direction, which is both good and bad, because some people struggle for a long time because nobody makes them do it a way that will work. They go out and beat their head against the wall. And by the way, I just found this out. If you beat your head against the wall for an hour a day, it burns somewhere between 150 and 200 calories. Don't do it, but I'm just saying, I just read that. So if you're looking for a great weight loss program, that might work out for you. And I've definitely beat my head against the wall trying to identify who am I supposed to become. But when somebody actually told me, they're like, think about it like this. If you were a professional recruiter, if that was your career, if that was how you identified yourself, how are you going to look at everything else from then on? And I was like, man, that really makes sense. You can either get paid on 24 hours. Yes, Dave, that's absolutely true. But if you thought about yourself like a recruiter, you're going to look at everything as a recruiter. So it just helped me a lot when I said, well, what is the profession? Who am I looking to become? A big business owner. I'm looking to become a professional recruiter and team builder. That just made things so much easier to explain and to tell other people about. Then it comes down to your thinking. Your thinking then leads into your attitude. So I found that people are either positive or negative, usually by personality and by programming. And what I mean by programming is if you grew up in a house where dad was negative, if you grew up in a house where mom was negative, if you are in a job where the people are negative, guess what? That's going to start coming out of you. And what I mean coming out of you is you're going to look at things that way. You're going to say things that way. You're going to be negative. So you have to kind of watch. What I found is the first thing you have to watch is your self-talk. And self-talk is the stuff that you say to yourself. And you're like, I don't talk to myself. And that's what we're talking about, is when you talk to yourself. So you have to kind of protect that. How do you protect that? Well, if there's more going in than going out, it's better. So sometimes many of us, this is why it took me so long, is I had to listen to a ton of personal development, and all of a sudden I found that my language is changing. Now, Brandy, when we first started doing this, is I had her start listening to stuff and I had her start reading. And I'll let her tell you what ended up happening is people started saying, oh wow, you sound like...
They're like, you sound like Jeff now. I was like, well, that's kind of a good and bad thing in a couple ways. But when I would go home to visit my family, and for those of you who don't know, I'm actually from Wisconsin and I grew up there my whole life. So whenever I go back to visit, my family would actually make comments. They're like, you sound different now. They're like, you're just very different, just the way that you hold yourself. They're like, you've always been more of the mature type, but they're like, just the way that you're holding yourself and the way you're speaking with people, they're like, you're much more confident in who you are now. And they're like, I actually had one of my friends comment, they're like, you sound smarter. I was like, thanks. I'm like, I don't know whether or not to take that as a compliment or an insult, but I will take it as a compliment. So with the personal development and changing your philosophy and your way of thinking, I grew up in a small town, and with the small town mindset, everybody's just go to school, get good grades, go off to college. If college doesn't work out, you come back, work on the farm or work in the restaurant. And then everybody gets married and has kids, and that's pretty much it. Like, there is nothing else, and that's just normal up there. So going outside of your comfort zone and changing the way that you're doing things, it can be a little bit scary for some people. But if you look around and don't see that you want anything that everybody else has around you, you need to change what's around you. It might take a little bit of time of being by yourself for a little bit just to get a grasp of who you want to be. And then once you start becoming that person, you'll attract the right people.
So that's really, the thinking. The attitude is basically how you feel. Think about it. If you were negative all the time, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel bad. So a friend of mine told me this real early on. This was one of my mentors. He said, you have to start out by thinking right. If you think right and make decisions, then you'll act right. And if you act right, then you'll feel right. You can't think yourself into feeling, but you can act yourself into feeling, but you're not going to act until you're thinking straight. But most people do everything the exact opposite. And what I mean by the exact opposite is most people feel first, they act second, and then they think, shit, what just happened? I mean, so many people, that's their life. And that you can see because they posted on Facebook. They're like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? I don't know how this happened. And I'm like, I could see it a month ago based on what you were doing, based on what you were posting, based on what you were feeling. You know, you are feeling your way into your life, and that usually is a problem. Now, we're not talking about instinct, gut instinct. Hey, this seems bad. That's not what we're talking about. You know, definitely follow that. What we're talking about, Scott Aguilera's here. What's happening, sir? What we're talking about specifically, the kind of attitude we're talking about is a positive professional attitude versus a negative, pessimistic attitude. You want to look at things as possibilities. Like, I'm going to figure out a way to make this happen, not, you know, oh my gosh, this probably isn't going to happen because. So the interesting thing about your imagination is the exact same part of your brain that creates fear, that says, oh, well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? I can't believe, you know, this person could say this and then they could say that and then it's not going to work. The exact same part of your brain that creates that can also create the faith side, which is, if I talk to this person, this is what I expect. If I talk to this person, this is what's going to happen. And you literally have to train your brain and train yourself to start having that faith-based mentality of, I am going to create, I am going to make things happen. I love what Tony Robbins said. He goes, if there is a way, if there is a will, there is a way. I will find out how to do it. There's always a way. There's always enough resources if I'm committed enough. So that leads down to commitment. So the next thing is your actions. And so we've gone through programming, philosophy, identity, thinking, attitude, and then actions. Actions is over halfway down on the list. So before you get started doing anything, I sit down and actually talk with people, and I usually find out who their parents are, where they grew up. When I find out who their parents are, where they grew up, where they went to school, what stuff did they study, who are their friends, and I find out what do you do for work, you start hearing their programming, you start hearing their philosophy, you start hearing their identity, who they think they are. Now, who they think they are and who they can be is two totally different people usually, and you have to, as a leader, as a networker, see people for more than they are, see people for their potential, not physically for where they're at. Your actions lead into your habits. So if you do stuff consistently, you want to create good habits. You want to teach people to create good habits right away. The habits basically lead to your results, and your results are going to lead your lifestyle, and your lifestyle is basically the legacy that you will leave behind. So I know that was long, but that's just what we're talking about. So programming, you can have this kind of program. You can be an entrepreneur. You can have the programming of self-employed. You can have the programming of a career employee. You can have the programming of employee, or you can have the programming of just being broke. Because some people grow up and their programming is just broke. Everything's hard. Nothing works. Everybody's out to get you. If you have the everybody's out to get you attitude, everybody's trying to screw you. Everybody's trying to get something from you. Everybody's trying to take something from you. You're going to project that onto every single person you work with. So it's something you kind of have to self-check yourself and figure out. Philosophy, we already talked about this, unlimited versus limited. Identity, successful versus unsuccessful. At the most basic level, most people will choose one of these. I'm successful or I'm unsuccessful. How do you change that? You change that through the first thing, programming and philosophy. Thinking, long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. Most people who are broke, most people who are unsuccessful have short-term thinking. Oh my gosh, what do I do right now? What do I do right now to get out of this situation? What do I do right now so I can pay my bill on Friday? What do I do right now, because I just lost my job? What do I do right now? It's all about right now instead of long-term thinking of what is the best possible outcome that I can create out of this. The short-term thinking is I'm just trying to get by. I'm just wasting time. I'm doing nothing. I'm killing time, sort of, kind of. All of those phrases, I can tell somebody's a short-term thinker. Attitude, positive or negative, we already talked about that. Actions, dream-driven or reactive. Most people are reactive. Most people are circumstance-driven. Most people are random. Most people are unplanned. Habits. Are they planned? Are they focused? Are they disciplined? Are they consistent? Are they tracked? Most people, again, are reactive, circumstantial, random, and completely unplanned. Results. Do you want predictable, planned, tracked, timed results? If you do, you have to kind of set this up in the beginning the right way. Lifestyle, is it dream driven? Is it goal focused? Is it activity tracked? Or is it random, unplanned, unexplainable, and lucky? You know, that's most people's explanation for people who do well. It's all luck, you know, you just right place, right time. And then legacy, you either want to be a great example to follow, or you're a warning or lesson of what not to do. So how do you change your programming? How do you change your philosophy? Well, it's the ideas that you have coming in. How do you change that? What you listen to, what you read, what you watch, and who you hang out with. So in the beginning, there are books that are easier to read than others. Some things are really deep. You know, some people hand people Think and Grow Rich right off the bat, and that is a deep book. I think it's a great book, but it's not necessarily the first one that I would recommend. Brady, what was some of the books that I recommended to you first? Like, what were a couple of the first ones you read?
First ones I read, I want to say, by Eric Worre, there was GoPro, because that's basic sales, and it's very easy to read for a new person. I read a sales book before I read that, and oh my God, such a difference. I was like, I don't even remember what I read out of that first book, but this makes sense. So that one's a really good one. Developing a Leader Within You by John Maxwell, and Everybody Communicates, Few Connect, also by John Maxwell. So those are some really good books to start out with, just to kind of get a grasp on what you need to do and how to improve. And John Maxwell actually is awesome at doing that, and he really breaks down, and then he has questions at the end of each chapter and at the end of the book, where you can ask yourself questions of how are you applying this in your life or in your business.
Awesome. So some books that I always recommend, The Magic of Thinking Big, kind of expand your mindset. Robert Kiyosaki's books are amazing. So Business of the 21st Century, which talks about network marketing, is an amazing book to get people to read. I actually recruited a guy from Starbucks who built inside of Legal Shield. This was years ago. Handed him that book. He read it, and I actually gave it to him, and about 6 months later he read it, and the moment he got done reading it, he called me because I put my name and number inside the book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is another book that's amazing. It's simple. Out of all of Robert Kiyosaki's books, I think the ones that I like so far the best is, right now I'm reading Second Chance by Kiyosaki. But my favorite book so far by Kiyosaki is The Unfair Advantage. Man, if you've read The Unfair Advantage, that one is spectacular. Another book, Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk. It kind of depends on what people's personality is. I kind of like story-based. Failing Forward by John Maxwell is probably my all-time favorite book to hand somebody from John Maxwell. Failing Forward. By far one of the easiest to read of all of his work. And it's story-based, and it just kind of says, hey, everybody messes up, but you can still make it. I mean, that's the overwhelming theme of the book. And I found that not only is that one easy to read, easy to comprehend, but people relate to it right away. Some of John's book, you know, some people are giving them like a college education on leadership right away, and people are like, man, I haven't even gone to grade school yet. It's just too much too fast. And then audios. What I try to do is I try to get people to watch things that kind of expand their mind. I just put out one, School versus Education. Amazing video by a British student, or British college student that had just graduated. And he's actually filming. It's in black and white. It's so good. And then there's another video by Simon Sinek that I really like about the programming that we all have. I start out with things like that. Hey, have you watched this? Have you watched this? It's not so much seminar based. Sometimes it's more poetry based. It's easy to listen to. It kind of gets you in the mood of like, okay, this is kind of cool. It's not just study stuff. And then as we go, I get deeper. I know Tom and I switch back and forth, and we send people, you know, a lot of John Maxwell videos. It just kind of depends on what people are going through. If I find somebody who's going through some really harsh stuff and they're trying to re-identify who they are and what they're going to do in life, I typically will send them something by Maxwell. What's happening, Chrissy? He's got a really good one about purpose, the purpose of life, and it's spectacular. Sometimes John goes very what do I want to say? He gets into preaching. So I'm always careful where somebody's at and what their beliefs are. I'm not trying to push anything on anybody. My belief, his belief, anybody's belief. I don't try to push anybody's belief. I'm just like, hey, take this for what it is. And I always forewarn people. I'm like, hey, this guy's a pastor of a church. That's what he did for years. But then he broke away and started writing these books. And the books are more for everyday people, not just people who believe what he believes. And now he's one of the best authors in the world when it comes to leadership stuff. Finding your purpose. Yeah, that's it, Tom. So that's what I have for today, guys. A little bit of personal development, get into that. That's what's going to change your mindset. That's what's going to help these people the most, and how to introduce it. What are great resources to hand people? One of the best resources when somebody just gets into network marketing, if you haven't listened to this in a while, if you haven't listened to it this year, you want to go online and go to Jim Rohn, Building Your Network Marketing Business. Jim Rohn, Building Your Network Marketing Business. About an hour and 15 minutes. It's really something you want to listen to every day when you first get into network marketing, for at least the first month. And then after that, it's not bad to pick up once a week or once a month and just review, because it just puts everything in perspective again. And Jim Rohn is one of the best to listen to. Again, not because he's just so easy to listen to, but because he teaches in a way that's just so simple that anybody can grasp the concept. So with that, anything else, Brandy?
Nope, I think that's it. We're going to be heading out here, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.